Great, I'm Professor Green, and this is our final part to this course, part 3 of chapter 17. So as I said, there are two key issues to compensation. The first one is adjusting compensation to reflect national differences in economic circumstances and compensation practices. As you can imagine, if you get transferred to someplace with a different cost of living, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We'll go through these ideas in the next couple of slides. And then also talking about how should really these expatriate managers, how should they be paid? So let's talk about the first one. This is not an issue in ethnocentric or polycentric staffing because that's more kind of localized, either the home or the host country. But in this geocentric policy where managers are moving throughout the organization, throughout many different countries, because they hire based on the best fit for the role, that they want to develop an international way that managers know ahead of time how they'll be paid and then also feel well compensated. So whether they should decide whether all executives should receive the same salary regardless of their current country of origin or not. And that's a big thing here in the United States, right? Because Mercer Consulting has done research, many other groups have done other research based on this, that the idea that US CEOs can often earn double the pay of non-US CEOs, right? And so if you move a top manager, maybe not a CEO, but a C-level manager from the US to abroad, you might have some problems because they're being paid extremely a lot of money. And then the second bullet point here says it could create resentment among foreign nationals. So now they're making double and doing the same amount of work, right? When they work in France or Germany or Hong Kong, etc. So, and 85% of companies surveyed have a global compensation strategy in place. So that's a good thing that they are working and mitigating this because there's definitely a gap here and there's a problem. So the common approach to expatriate pay is what's called the balance sheet approach. We'll talk about this. It'll look at a diagram in the next slide. It helps equalize purchasing power across countries so employees can have the same standard of living in a foreign country as at home. Usually your package will include 5 major things. And this has been my experience too. Even when you move cross country, when I moved from Washington, D.C. to California, it had similar types of ideas in there. So a base salary. So you have your base that you're starting with. You're going to have a foreign service premium. And that's going to be something that gives you like a little incentive to move because it takes a lot of time to do this process, to move and choose schools, et cetera, et cetera. You'll have allowances. You'll have make sure you have your benefits and make sure you can pay for your benefits, and then make sure that there's money in there for any tax differentials. So maybe the host country has higher taxes than your home country, and they want to make sure that you don't have to pay for that yourself. And so this is how it all comes together. As you can see, the home country salary here, you have your taxes, your housing, your goods and services, and maybe your savings, and then your assignment location costs. And you'll see that your home and assignment location income taxes might be bigger. Your housing might be bigger. Goods and services might be bigger, but then, they want to make sure that you have the same reserve. And assignment location costs paid by company and from your salary. And so again, making sure that the income taxes are paid from your salary, that maybe that portion of your housing is paid from your salary. And portion of the goods and services is paid from your salary. And then the home country equivalent purchasing power. So this is then where the premiums and incentives come in, because they want to make sure that you have some extra money for things that you didn't have to account for in your home country. So let's move on to the next slide. So your base salary, normally the same range as for a similar position in the home country. If you're not a CEO, hopefully this isn't a problem. It's pretty much the same or similar. You get this foreign service premium, as I said, extra pay for working outside of the country of origin. It's offered as an inducement or an incentive to accept foreign postings. So as they know, right, that it's not so simple sometimes to go abroad. So they want you to be incentivized to do that. And then you get these allowances, a hardship allowance. This is the cost for basic amenities that you might that are different from the home location, especially if you're going to a more difficult location. You want to make sure that you have really good health care and different things that are causing you a little bit of hardship to live maybe in a developing country. You have a housing allowance, again, to be able to find housing that is similar to the housing situation that or a standard that you're used to in your home country. A cost of living allowance, this is the change in potential salary, that maybe it's more expensive, right, to live in Switzerland than it is in New York. And an education allowance for for your children if they can't go to the local public school, to give you some extra money in case you need to enroll them in private school. And then the last one here is taxation. This is, as I said earlier, the expats might have to pay income taxes in both the home and the home country. This is actually really, for the most part, only if you're a U.S. citizen. U.S. is really one of the few countries that still tax you, even if you're working outside of the country. Yeah, I don't know how they can get away with it, but they do still. And so there might be a reciprocal tax treaty. And that's what I had when I lived in Switzerland, that I paid taxes in Switzerland, and then I would credit that to my U.S. taxes. And so the U.S. tax rate is lower in Switzerland than it is in the U.S. So say I paid whatever, $15,000 a year in taxes, and then my U.S. taxes were usually like 18 or maybe $20,000. So then I would just pay the 3 or 5%, $3,000 or $5,000 are the difference. So and then there's benefits, as I mentioned. They want to make sure that they receive the same level of medical and pension benefits that you're receiving at home. Great. So let's move on to these two slides here about diversity in the workplace. I feel like this is very redundant from your exposure here at LMU and in life in general over the next couple of years. I won't go too detailed here. There's competitive advantage and higher profits, obviously, right? This is why I am so passionate about international business, because I grew up with this mindset that if we are open to understanding other cultures, we are better people and we make the world a better place. We also make the organization more competitive, and we're able to bring in more money to the organization. So diversity improves performance, insights into needs of a diverse customer space, obviously capitalizes on talents of women and minorities, develops a better relationship with a diverse customer base again. So not only insights, but a relationship with them. May improve the brand image, so the reputation could be improved, and increases employee satisfaction because people feel maybe better heard if they are a minority in the workplace. And also just people respect that more, so their reputation increases. So there's steps to promoting diversity, workforce diversity. Create a clear proposition value that identifies benefits of a diverse workplace. Set clear goals, not just quotas. Lead by example. Establish diversity workshops and creating employee reference groups. So as I've said, I've really been quite well supported, I feel, working in both engineering and banking, which are very male dominated in both areas. Ever since I started in the late 90s, there are always support groups for women in the workplace, which has been great. And so one of our last slides here, last 3 slides, we're going to talk about international labor relations, because this is not an issue to be overlooked. You want to make sure that if you're a leader, you're understanding what the labor relations, what the unions are doing in your host country. So multinationals, right, Unilever, P&G, et cetera, they can counter the union bargaining power by threatening to move production to another country. So the unions feel very threatened, right? They say, okay, if the union in France doesn't cooperate, we will then move the production to Italy. Oops. So the unions in France are motivated to work with the organizations, Unilever, car manufacturers, etc. Multinationals will keep highly skilled tasks in the home country and farm out only the low skilled tasks. So that will happen as well. That I'll use Unilever again, but they will keep all the highly skilled management roles in the US, and then the lower level, the secretaries, the paperwork, the people who put together the products, that will be all outsourced. And sometimes the unions don't like that. They want a mix of different skill levels. And the last bullet point here is that the imported employment practices and contractual agreements will reduce union influence and power. So again, the idea is that when expats come and work in their country, they're not only being hired and over the union people, but they have practices and different agreements that maybe are not in balance or are not in agreement with the union ideas. So here's a picture of some employees working on a chassis of a Opel car in a GM factory in Germany. And if you read in the textbook that the unions in Germany are quite powerful when it comes to car manufacturing. And so when GM started to work in Germany, they really only allowed GM to come and work in Germany if GM also agreed to open up factories in other German-speaking countries like Austria, so that the other people in the union who are also in these other countries potentially would also have work. And it also didn't take away too much of the work from the union workers in Germany. So there was a little bit of negotiation there. So the strategies of organized labor, they're trying to establish their own internal international organizations. Slowly but surely, they're doing that. They're lobbying for national legislation to restrict multinationals, as I said, because they feel that sometimes they impede on the rules and the ideas behind the unions. The unions are trying to achieve regulations of multinationals through international organizations such as the UN. Right. As you can see, I'm hesitant because I don't see that happening very quickly or very easily. And in 1960s, the organized labor began to establish international trade secretariats, the ITTs. So yes, it is moving forward, but as we see in this last bullet point, the author agrees with me that these efforts have had only limited success, right? In all my experience working abroad, I don't see very much influence of the unions on the MNEs. That being said, I've worked in banking where there are not a lot of unions, but from the research that I've done, the people that I've spoken to, I don't see a lot of moving forward with these unions because so often the unions are in the big picture losing a little bit of power. So what can we do though to work with the unions, because they are still very strong in many countries like France? So the labor relations have been decentralized to individual subsidiaries, so it's less common to have them have international groups. And the trend is toward greater centralization control. Some firms threaten unions with moving production in order to limit wage rates. And many firms are realizing that how work is organized within a plant can be a source of competitive advantage. And so you want to make sure that you pay attention to these unions. All right, here comes Rodney. Thank you so much for joining us for Chapter 17. This is the end of the curriculum for this course. Thank you so much for joining me.